Yay. Look at this. Yvonne, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Beautiful. We'll be diving into water today,
I
and
know.
excited to do so. It's um, it's a relevant currency in nature. It has a lot to offer, and without it, we all wouldn't be here.
Well, that's for sure.
So amazing. I'd like you to take us into maybe the mystery of water, because it is a bit of a substance that we've reduced as a people to the so-called letter number combination H2O from a scientific perspective, and that reductionist approach is really shaped many. Well, how I look at it in the macro picture is that our Western societal model is you open the tap, water comes out, and we don't question it. Having studied Victor Schauberger's work and having also followed Callum Coates for a number of years, way back in the days when I was really into my own natural health research, I learned that all the pipes basically strip all the electrons of our water out of the water, and what we're basically getting is just a kind of liquid substance. But water is much more than the end result that comes out of our pipes, because it has the capacity to be totally revitalized. And before I share my own personal experience on my journey in learning so much and finding so many answers, I'd like to invite you to yeah to dunk us under.
Dunk us under. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Well, the reason that I thought it'd be good to have a look at the power of water is because, like everything else in life, it's a gift. And I look at water from the perspective of the an element. We have, five elements, elements in space. And without water, as you said, we cannot exist on this planet. And yet, like so much, since we have been so indoctrinated and programmed into a commercial, materialistic world, well, certainly the Western world, and unfortunately, we have infiltrated much of the Eastern world as well. And as a result, we have lost connection with nature. We've lost connection with ourselves in nature, and we've lost connection with the elements of nature. And water, of course, is the greatest gift. We are at least 70 to 85% water ourselves. And all of that is just ignored. It's just, yes, all of a sudden, because there was a commercial value in suddenly selling water. Honestly, if I brought my mother back today and said, yes, we buy water, she'd go, you do what? Because water is a gift, right? It comes out of the sky. It comes from the mountains. It comes from the streams. And yet we treat it so badly. So when I look at water, I look at it from the perspective of knowing that water is like quartz crystal in that it has memory. So it's very similar to quartz crystal. We have suddenly a lot of people have learned to use crystals for their own benefit and know that you can program them, but they don't realize that we program, and it's not about can programming. We are programming the world every day with every thought we have, with every emotion we have, with every word we speak, with every action that we undertake. We are impacting the world. And as a result, we have to live that as an experience. So when I transfer that to water, um, then I realized, like you said, because water has become a commercial enterprise and it goes through the water that we use goes through all these pipes and is completely stripped from its natural product and elements. So what happens then? Is that irreparable? The answer is no, because we are nature. And when it's all about relationship with water that I want to talk about. What is your relationship when you take a glass of water? Are you busy talking to a person while you're just slugging away because you're thirsty? Or is your mind somewhere else? We need to start relating to the water. Relating, I've got a little bit in my book about having your shower a different way. Every time that you have a shower, you put your love and gratitude and purity into the water that comes out of the shower, and allow the shower to not just wash away the external toxins, but to cleanse the inner. And because as it touches your skin, it touches you. And when you become one with that water, and you impregnate it with love and gratitude and health, makes your shower a whole new experience. So that's really where I want to take it today, is our personal relationship with one of the most, well, all elements are most important. Without all four of them, there is no life. But the one that is probably most prevalent and most needed, and that is water. So let's give it a bit of a whirl, shall we?
So great. Yeah, it is so much more than what maybe on a daily basis we. It seems that even myself, I take it for granted. I love hot showers personally. I think water is amazing for that, and it is interesting that to come into that awareness myself. Like, how conscious am I? How present am I really with this substance that gives life to all of life? It's without water, there is nothing is going to be growing, and it's very nice to kind of sit still with that for a bit, and like how. Therefore, the question arises: how present am I then with? Am I actually present in my body, or am I just like, all right, I get to take my mind off whatever I was thinking about because I'm getting a state change in the hot shower, as opposed to, and I notice that I'm still not present. I'm just drifting off somewhere else again. And here in Bali, there's a lot of water that comes down, of course, from the sky and beautifully filter through all these rice paddies and the waterway systems that are very complex. So there is a reverence for water, but at the same time, there's a total neglect of. Um, I feel that even in spiritual cultures, there's a great loss that has come about in terms of the real reverence for what water is. We all call it sacred, we all call it holy, and we all in ceremonies we'll sanctify it, and yet it's that pretty much every day. And here in Bali, it's of course phenomenal to see the amount of waste and plastic that runs through the river streams. Pretty it's a pretty real scenario, and yet there seems to be this inner relating once the spiritual engagement is turned on, that it's sacred and it's holy, but there seems to be a conflict of how that actually manifests in the external world. And the Western world is probably the greatest and best example of that. Not only in our oceans do we have lakes of plastic that are all part of our industrial approach to life, but the way that the Western world has set itself up is that we use water for a whole range of things that aren't necessarily bad. But if we look at our sewage systems and what all goes into water, and it's just merely used as a means to flush things out, it's just a nice liquid version to transport stuff from A to B, because things float on it. It has so many beautiful qualities, and it's almost that we're everything in life is making use of other elements in life to perform a function. But it's like we entered into kind of like a reductionist relationship in terms of the function. Things float on it, well, let's just use it to funnel out all of our crap with a big pipeline out into the ocean, because we can't actually be bothered to even properly filter it. And so I see that there's a lot of loss in our collective in that relationship to water. And then I bring it back to myself and I look at, wow, how conscious am I with it? I drink spring water here because there's still beautiful water that just comes out of the mountains, out of the little hill, out of a little side of a little ridge. And it made me really wonder the other day, is like, I've never really looked at the capillary functioning of nature underground. I've been told a whole bunch of things that, yeah, water just kind of finds its way upstream all the way to the top of a mountain, and that's because that's somehow a weak point in the earth crust is there, and therefore water finds itself all the way up to the top and starts trickling back down. And it's like the cyclical nature that I discover as I contemplated that in the river, and then going to the mount and where the spring comes out, and then going inside and really imagining and feeling into, is like, wow, the fast filtration that happens and the re-energization that happens through the earth's field and through all the earth's minerals is so profound. And then once it comes to the upper surface, it's almost like it's going through a dark cycle, and it's like almost an inversion, and it's being exposed, of course, to sunlight, but in the Western world, um, it's really just being used in a way that seems to, I guess, be a reflection of how disconnected we actually are with nature, and yet it has so much depth in consciousness. When I think of Dr. Asuro Emoto, um, the work that he's done on it, many people would know about Messages in Water. That has really brought forth such an intricate understanding of, whoa, water is so much more than what we're treating it like. We're throwing it through treatment plants, but personal treatment is outsourced in a very industrialized way. And I learned, probably about 15 or 20 years ago, about a, a team in Turkey that figured out how to electrolyze water and put a third electron around the water molecule, which made water hyper intelligent. And so they did a whole range of beautiful demonstrations where they had this big fat of just absolute toxic rubbish crap, and they did it in all sorts of scenarios. And they would pour in a liter of this water or a bucket of this water in some cases, and you would see that this combination of just, call it sewage, was just totally being retransformed within matter of minutes because of the intelligence residing within that supercharged water. And I forgot the name of the water, but it was Drunvalo Melchizedek at the time that was bringing that out to the world. And then a couple of months later, Drunvalo said, well, we can't have access to that water anymore because, that got rolled up just like the cars that have already been around for ever since cars started driving around, that have been running on water, on hydrogen in that sense, pouring just tap water in and letting the car. So the water is so much more than what we've been told, and we've been really kept in a picket fencing in terms of the mainstream narratives around it, and it's really not being questioned much. So for me, I've looked into the magic of water. I've reconstituted a very personal relationship when I dove deep into the whole subject, and recognize now, 15 years later, that I need to revisit this subject myself, because it's so easy. It's just so easy to take things for granted. Maybe you can shine some light on how I may get some inspiration again to recalibrate that within, because that's where the treatment really, and treatment of the relationship with water, uh, for me, then can be transformed, of course.
Wow. You mentioned the word reverence on stage. And the thing that you and I are both passionate about is to create a new earth communities where we live completely differently to the old way. We're moving out of the old way into a higher state of consciousness. And part of that journey for me is to bring reverence back to nature, to reconnect us with nature as nature. And so I would really like to bring attention to having greater reverence for water, so that when we are engaging with water in whatever form that may take, whether it is having a bath, whether it is having a drink, whether it is using it to make a cup of tea, whether it is having a shower, whatever it is, become consciously connected to the water as you use it. Because what happens with water is, in its natural state, whether it's natural in its state that it is, which is it's a chemical, and it's got, for me, two parts. I'm not a scientific person, but the chemistry of water stays the same. It is the molecular structure of it that changes. So as it travels, wherever it travels, in it, let's say its natural state, where it travels down a mountain and through all of its thing, it is constantly absorbing what it passes. So as it goes through the different stages of the mountain, if it's going past the rocks, it'll absorb the natural processes that are around it, the whatever it passes through. So as you mentioned before, because it's now for our so-called convenience, it gets piped into all sorts of pipelines with all these, rectangular things. It gets stripped. There is nothing other than metal for it to absorb. So by the time that we get it, it has all that metallic particles or memory that it has within it. And therefore, it is essential for us not to just drink water without thought. When you can really look at the water before you do anything with it, and you start to implant it with energies that you require if you're going to ingest it, or that you require if you're going to bathe in it, or if you're going to stand in it. Water has always been a healing modality. People have gone to the waters to be healed. And they talk about it's the minerals in the water. It's the water. The water is what is healing or not healing. It is if you trust that water is healing, and that is the energy you put in the water, it'll be healing for you. But again, we think it's something that has to be put into the water before it has any power. We haven't even begun to understand the power of water. We haven't, and I don't care how many scientists there are on this planet, we have not yet begun to understand the power of water. But let's just go back to how much of it we already know. We know that water gives us electricity, right? We know that water, when it is incredibly powerful when it comes down a mountain. And who doesn't love a waterfall? My favorite place on earth is Iguazu Falls. I think it goes beyond any other falls on earth, full of rainbows and butterflies and every life that comes to those falls as they plummet down into this split in the earth. And it is just magical. And when you're there, you don't have to even get into the water. The spray, it lifts your energy, because that is water celebrating itself. Water celebrates itself when it is left alone. And in that power, it is magical. We can just stand there and do we wonder why? What is it in us that draws us to the water, that draws us to the sea, that draws us to a river, that draws us to a lake. Why not? Most of us is water. You know that. And we just don't think about that. We're so mental that we've forgotten. And just sitting on the beach and watching the waves going in and out, how soothing is that to our soul? Because that is our water, our 85%, being reminded of its natural state. And if we can learn to do that consciously, if we can learn to sit there and acknowledge that we are a relative, for the want of a word that might be able to be understood, that we are part of this amazing power, and it lives within us. In fact, it is the life within us. But no, we don't think about that. We just have another swig. Everybody tells us we have to drink water. We have to drink water. Why? Well, it's good for our health. Yeah, right. But it would be much better if the water you drank, you put love into. You put gratitude into. You gave it back its natural properties. And you can. Filters. You talk about filters. I've never had a filter in my life. I filter the water with my thoughts, with my connection, with my emotions, with my love, with my gratitude. There isn't a drop of water that comes into my house that has not got an intention in it. And that's what I would like to bring back into people's awareness. When we move out of this world that has been so boxed up, and we return to nature, and we allow this beautiful gift of water, and we understand or understand that this has a memory, and the more that we send love into it, the more it will love us right back. And of course, Dr. Emoto did such amazing, amazing work on that. And yes, I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I have a very special relationship with the story of Dr. Emoto. It was a number of years ago, and I'll bring up a little slide here. I was organizing, let's see, let me put it on the forefront. I was, through my little organization, asked to organize a water gathering in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And here's a little graphic of that. And of course, we invited Dr. Emoto to come, but he was at that time already very unwell. And we had a forum that lasted 5 days, and we discussed and talked, and people shared and offered their sacred knowledge. And it was the first time that the Western world was welcomed into this indigenous circle. And it was, I think it was on the second or the third day when we received the news that during our gathering, and there was a huge Japanese group that actually came from Japan over for this because of their relationship to Waitaha, but also water being the subject, so close to their spiritual relationship, relating back to the work of Dr. Emoto. And so they ended up organizing a beautiful ceremony, because on the very tippy top, I suppose, of the North Island is the place where spirits leave the earth and they go back to heaven. And so we held a special ceremony there for Dr. Emoto's earthly departure. And it was very beautiful to be so closely connected in an indirect way to the profound work that he's done. And it was a beautiful time for me to dive really deep into the subject matter of water, and to really look at the concept of a droplet of water, which contains all of life, because water can't be separated. Although there's a droplet of it, it is part of the element of water, and the cross communication between water is has also been demonstrated that influences and energies can be transformed even over long distance. So there's so much more to this. It was a beautiful time for me to, yeah, really question and sit with the essence. And I came up myself with this idea to choose to really engage with water, to meet water for the first time, and to sit with it in open curiosity to see what I know. A whole bunch of things about it, scientific, non-scientific, a whole bunch of sacred spiritual things. But is there maybe a message in water for me personally? Is there a way that I can relate with water totally anew, not based on old concepts or ideas? And it's quite beautiful what came into that for me in the lead up to the gathering, is that I got totally like in awe of water, and started really feeling the reverence, but also the relationship, and feeling the water within my cells, and trying to learn how to be in a more harmonic relationship. And I was just taking a sip of my drink here, and it's as easy as just taking that sip and then just saying thank you as it goes in. And that thank you as a frequency of gratitude, we all know is imprinting and has a beneficial effect, but it's more that it it reaffirms a way of relating. And for me, it doesn't mean that I have to sit and hold the cup wholly up and imprinted with my third eye projection and burn incense to make it, an extra sacred experience because I'm going to have my jug of water for the rest of the day here. Water doesn't have any terms on like, well, no, you have to recite this mantra 16 times, then I will take up your intentions. It's more about the authenticity of the heartfelt relating. And so it's about a frequency of connection that in my own personal life, I'm quite honestly not engaging in enough. We have beautiful water temples here in Bali. And it's funny that every time that I have had in the past been under whatever I would call it, attack, or just totally run down, because I've done a lot of things over the past years that really exhausted me, I would go there to lay down all my burdens, and I would go through the process of the 13 spouts of water, and they have a process for it all. And I would come out transformed. Similarly, did I come out transformed when I got baptized a number of years ago? The reason that I did that is because I had so much resistance to it. So I was like, all right, got to go there, got to annihilate that little, story and that little structure of identity. Like, oh, no, I don't need God. I was like, oh, no. But just going then into the process of the submersion, the the quality and the diversity of quality in our lives is so fast, and it's so underrelated with. And that's something that I recognize for myself, that I want to recultivate, because all of that goes in here. And the quality of what goes in here, if it's all unconscious, is only going to be doing what it is sort of imprinted with. And yeah, to that effect, while being in Bali, I learned a lot on how to program water according to the Tolkien calendar, and put water outside, and have it be charged in the rhythmic patterns of our solar system, which has been a tremendous, insightful cultivation of relationship. And that's something that on every 28 days is become a practice for me. And it's beautiful learn more about the rhythmic patterns that are in the macro existing that influence nature and life, and that can be captured in water form, and then I put it in a little mister and I spray it out. And perhaps a lot of that is belief, perhaps a lot of that is a spiritual fantasy. However, when that water has been taken to temples here and sprayed around, instantly the priests are like, wow, what's that? We want to know what that is about. And so that is a beautiful, um, it's a beautiful gift that I was given in my unique ability to cultivate a more intimate relationship with water and create a way to restructure also my molecular cellular frequencies, or at least enhance them. I don't know. Do you have any experience with sharing your intention with water and how you go about that?
Well, you're talking about Bali. Of course, I've been running retreats in Bali for 8 years, and they were very much about purification, and most of it was through water. So when you talk about the water temples, I've been to several amazing water temples, and it is so true what you said earlier. You know, the Balinese have this relationship with water as a blessing. You know, wherever you go, you are being blessed with water, and it's wonderful because as you are getting blessed, they impregnate that water with their blessings, which is beautiful. And then they have this reverence for the water as a purification. They pray to it, they pray with it. And yet, as you say, when it comes to making sure that they keep their rivers and everything clean, they seem to be disconnected from that. So yes, I've had some amazing personal experiences with myself and many people uh, going through these water purifications where I have seen people just drop their whole shadow side, like bang, like that. There is a beautiful water temple that has the most, it's very difficult to get to, a huge waterfall in it. And at the time when we went, they were still making it a little safer. But some of my crew, they braved and the rocks and went and stood under these waterfalls and just screamed and screamed. And this water, it just took away all their pain, all their trauma, because that was the intention that they went into the water with. And one particular time I remember, during one of those ceremonies, I was filming, and then as they were standing under there was this amazing rainbow that just formed like a bridge over them. And it's those moments that you realize how amazing nature is when you call upon it and when you become one with it. So I've had many experiences with water. I've sat in many spas and natural springs, and it is this sensation of relaxation that water gives you. It is like, it's such a calming thing. It's like a wonderful gift to us. Um, and I believe that why that is because we are water. Now, this is something that we talk about a lot, but how many of us actually relate to that? Because when we look at ourselves, we're not water. We're solid, right? Yes. So to say that 70% of us is water, that sounds good. But we can't really relate to it because we don't look like the water in the glass, right? So I believe when we are in these states where we sit in the water and we ask for healing, and and we go under into these wonderful temples, it is for the first time that the water within our body is actually able to be given attention to. We look at our body from the perspective of organs and this and that, but since when have you ever looked at you as a vessel of water and put energy into the purification of that water as a healing mechanism? Whoa, I have never said this before. This is pure download, guys. So just hang on. So that is really what this is about. It is being able to go within and see yourself as a vessel of water, and can we put healing into ourselves, into the water within our bodies, rather than just the organ or the whatever else that we want to heal. If we healed the water within us, that would make a huge difference. So, well, I'm certainly going to try that, because it's the first time that I've been made aware of actually activating that. For me, the experience of water is that you talk about gratitude. I can't tell you how many times I say thank you when I'm under a shower, because I love hot showers. I don't understand those people that do cold showers. My father used to say, turn that off and stand under the cold water, and typical Dutch man who and it was all a bit much for me, and I'm going to keep me warm. That's my soul. But every time you said you just had a drink and you said thank you as it went down, when you fill that your jug, when you fill your bath, I lived in Indonesia at a time where there was no water coming out of the tap at all. Okay, we had this huge vat that at 12, that was in the lovely days of Sukarno, used another control freak. Sorry about that. Anyway, so we didn't have any water. There was water available to us for an hour between, I remember, midday and 1 o'clock. So that's when we were able to, fill this vat. And then, of course, we had the little bucket. You've done this in the East, right? You go into the bathroom with cold water, and you've got your little bucket with a stick in the middle to hold it, and you have your mundi, right? You go in and, I loathed it. Because I liked hot water and there wasn't any coming out. So I remember having, no water. And if somebody forgot to turn that tap on, then we were without water. So until it disappears, then we seem to suddenly remember how valuable it is. But that is not how we've got to live. We've got to come back to recognizing what we've taken for granted, as you said. And it is the molecular structure in the water that is continuously absorbing the frequency. Here we go back to my favorite topic, the frequency of its surroundings. So I'd like to say that again. It is the molecular structure of the water that is continuously absorbing the frequency of its surroundings. So wherever it is, if you're drinking your water in the middle of a chaotic whatever market, right, and you're not thinking, you're talking to everybody, and you've got your bottle of water and you're swilling, you're thinking you're doing it good, well, all that you're drinking is that chaos that you're in, because that is what is within the water. It's exactly like quartz crystal. So do we know that? No. Do we remember that? No. We just go on our business and we expect things to do. And then we go, I don't feel so well. I feel really funny. Well, maybe you needed to have thought about that when you were swilling water in the middle of chaos. Think about it. Think about what you do with everything in our lives. And that's really where we're going with our conscious awakening that humanity is going through. It is to stop just going through the motions and to just slow down and pay attention and have intention into the water, into and the magic and the gratitude when you step into a river. And the other thing about it is, and I know the indigenous people do it so beautifully, they pray to the water. They pray to the river because they believe, and I believe, that there is an elemental in the water. So we pray to the elementals in the water, and we give gratitude and reverence. I know here in, well, I know it, there you go. Yes, I've been there many times. Oh dear, very nice. So it brings back lots of memories, and it makes me feel sad that I can't be there. Beautiful place, chakra cleansing, absolutely wonderful. So now you've made me lose my train of thought with all these pretty pictures, but that's what water is. It is magical. It takes up the surroundings all the time. So seeing that I've lost my train of thought, I'm sending the train back to you, seeing that you're playing with pretty pictures now.
Pretty pictures. So great. Yeah, the elementals in water. So beautiful.
Oh, that's the one I was talking about. Yes.
Almost an element in the conversation around water that is so easily to, why do people even pray to water? Why do people even, one of the beautiful things that my experience led me into in this Waitaha water gathering that I had the privilege to organize is that the word Waitaha means in Maori water carriers. And so the whole notion of what you spoke to earlier in terms of our vessels are carrying vessels of water, I got deeply steeped in that orientation and that awareness and that reflective. Wow, it really took me out of my mind into my body more and more. And in all of their ways of relating, the beautiful Waitaha people that have in their name as a people the carriers of the water, and they see us as humans as the universal carriers of the waters of the universe, so that the extension became so, yeah, spiritual in a beautiful way, very very early on, when I came to learn more and more about the spiritual nature of us as vessels of water carriers. And in that element of water, as you spoke in the beginning, the elements, there is an elemental spirited nature in water itself. When I look at the syntropic perspective at water, it's a wonderful way of questioning its function between beyond its material, application, what it does. And we just kind of easily say, yeah, well, water is life. Without water, we don't have life. To really sit with it and to really come to appreciate the the multitude, and it's not even, multitude is not even the right word, because it's more like an infinitive, ever expanding interrelationship that water has in all of life. And we say, yeah, without it, nothing, no life exists. So therefore it is present in all of life. There's even water in rocks. That's even possible, but you can look that one up. It is such a profound element, and in the relating to it, there's so much that I think in terms of so-called depth is so actually so easily cultivated. I find that water is, in its syntropic nature, having a life-bearing principle instilled within it. And so we can even have unhappy water, or yelled at water, or cursed at water, and sprinkle that over a field that we're growing food on, and yes, the imprinting does move forward because that's what we put into it, but underneath it, it still has the carrying capacity to give life, to bear life. So it's a beautiful, forgiving substance in my take on it. It's like, if all of our negative thoughts were imprinted and stayed in it right now on the earth, we would be living on a really toxic planet. And so nature has this beautiful way of re-energizing itself and recharging and purifying itself. And through the work of Callum Coates, I became more and more aware on how that applies itself. And the simplicity is that nature does this. And it lets water drop great heights. It lets it run through creeks, and it all just kind of reinforms itself and restructures it, and it reharmonizes it from, well, maybe the toxic waste dump that it actually got evaporated out of. And it's such a beautiful process that is part of the water cycle, that water will evaporate out of a toxic pool while the toxins remain, and then the water vapor goes up, and then it comes back down through the clouds and through the rain. And I've learned in my relationship to water to relate to water as a people's, and that was part of my teachings in terms of the elemental within it. So there's the cloud people, and there's then the water people that it spreads forth and drops back down. And so that has cultivated for me a more personal relationship, so that when it rains, a lot of people that put up an umbrella or they try to get out of the rain. I have made it my practice that when it starts raining, I just, of course, to its limitations, that I don't need to get drenched in it. But I've really learned to no longer be programmed like, oh, it's raining, I'm not going to go outside. No, it's raining. Let me go outside for a bit. Let me smell that. That very fresh earthen smell that gets released when water hits the ground. It's because electrons are, the minuses and pluses are interacting, and we smell that ozone. It's so beautiful. And yeah, to me, the journey with water is a lifelong journey. And as we are cultivating more of a conscious relationship within our own selves as a carrier, as a vessel, and a water carrier, we get to also relate to our different organs with so much more kindness and appreciation, because there's presence. And I think both reverence and presence kind of go hand in hand. You can't really have reverence without a certain level of presence. And I feel that that is something that just takes a breath to just slow down and step back. And then that engagement can become consciously engaged in. And it does change our day. It ripples out. It's so beautiful how that ripples out throughout the day. I see we have a whole bunch of comments, Yvonne. This is great. Let me see if I can. Oh, Paula says, well, this looks interesting. Yes.
I I'm pretty practical, so I always look at things. How can I use water practically? And my first thing is always through gratitude,
Yeah.
as I said before. But there's just a little thing that we can do with a glass of water, and that is we can imprint the water that we are about to drink with a request of our need. So you talked about putting messages in it, and Dr. Emoto was so wonderful at creating, crystals. And I was looking at a documentary. It's a wonderful documentary on Gaia, and they was showing the crystals of the water that just comes out of our tap after going through all the pipelines, and how distorted it is. So if you just drink it straight from the tap without putting anything into it, that is what you are ingesting. And so when
Yeah.
you think that that's doing you good, well, actually, it isn't. And not
Mhm.
because of the particles in it or the fluoride or all the other stuff. It's because you're not conscious. You're not connected to the water. You're not, you as a person, I know that I have the power to imprint something beautiful on this water before it goes into my body. So when I can imprint on it a state of healing, for instance, if I have
Mhm.
a body within my body, if I'm not well, then if I like so many, because we are frequency, frequency,
Mhm.
frequency. I cannot, honestly, I want it tattooed on the inside of everybody's eyelids. What frequency are you in when you, whatever, when you have your toast? When you know, again, are you putting good thoughts into that toast? Are you putting
Yeah.
good thoughts into this water? And so if there is something that you really want, and it doesn't have to be health, it can be, a work situation, or even a relationship improvement, whatever, you can actually write it on a piece of paper and put it down and then put the water on it, and then you draw that thought with intention and with gratitude and with love into the water. And then as you are drawing that into the water, for me, I just close my eyes, and then as I drink it, I'm actually drinking the message
Yeah.
that is under it. It's not just the message and the water, you must become a part of it. So I
Mm.
drink the water, I drink the message, I drink with every sip of water, I'm drinking do you know that lovely thing of to your health? How many times have you said, clink your glass to your health? Why do you think we don't even think about it? Because we're meant to drink to our health consciously. So
Mhm.
if you're watching this today, I hope that from now on you will never drink another drop of anything without imprinting it with good thoughts, with
Mhm.
love, with gratitude, with health and well being and joy, because that is what then you are going to ingest.
Yeah.
And then that frequency will have an effect on your physiology, on your emotional body, on your mental body, and you will start to radiate that. And this
Mhm.
is how we're going to learn to live in this new earth. We're going to become so connected to the elements because we are part of those elements. And when
Mhm.
we learn that, when we stop worrying about what we're going to do and what we're going to buy, when we just live in that space of being one with nature, in reverence, that is, I think, the key. In reverence,
Mhm.
not in control, not in if I do this, then nature will do that for me. Well, maybe yes, but point the finger here. If I do this, nature will do this for me, not
Mhm.
that way. And so for me, water is just such a precious gift that I just give incredible reverence to, incredible gratitude to, and I allow it to nurture me, to love me as I love it. And
So
as we
beautiful.
become one, Sadhguru often says, this is a banana, but when you eat it, the banana becomes you, you become the banana. Well, I become the water because that is what I'm connecting with.
So beautiful. Here are some of those beautiful images you spoke of.
Mm.
So there's tap water. There's water that's been exposed to a cell phone.
Oh,
Water crystal exposed to heavy metal, which is pretty much, they
how it
used to
comes
have
out of the tap.
water.
Mm.
Back in the days, it ran through lead pipes. They knew that that was making people heavily sick, and yet they continued it for a good while. But then, let's just focus on the good story of engaging with water. These are all beautiful crystals that become very different, and here we can see what
And
happens.
that's just through thought or through, well, he stuck, labels with words on it.
Yeah,
And that's what, we're capable of that. Gosh, we have such power inside of us. We have to learn to use it for good rather than for control, for fear, for all the
mm,
things that have caused us to be so separated from each other and from nature itself.
yeah. There's
And water
something
gives
beautiful that you
that.
mentioned, Yvonne, is that we often talk about the new earth and the frequency. Well, it's not like there's a frequency requirement in order to enter the new earth, because the new earth is already here for us if we are willing to uplevel our frequency. It's beautiful that you shared, and just reminded me. It's like so good to bring it back to that. It's like, where are we going with this? Could you share a little bit more around that?
Well, it's such a learning thing, isn't it? We are having to learn how to navigate and how to live differently. And what is really, I find, is difficult for most people is to look forward without using the past as a reference. And that is what we're asked to do, to look forward without a reference to the past, to look forward with what you call an empty slate, and then choose how to fill it with the foundation of love, peace, and harmony. And if we only look at it from the perspective of frequency rather than how do we do it, it is all about what does it feel like? What do we want to feel for each other? What do we want to feel for the earth? What do we want to feel for our food? What do we want to feel when we are giving service? What do we want to feel? How is it that we will resonate to the highest of high within this physical vehicle? When we connect to that and we give that freedom, then the doing just becomes automatic. I did a post this morning about synchronicity, and that, just the synchronicity and the flow of nature. We talk about water today, and water is at its best when it is flowing. People have often been warned, don't drink out of a stream if it hasn't been flowing, because when it stands still, there stagnation is possible. So that's the same for life. Everything in life is constantly moving forward. That is what life does. So making water flow is really important. Um, how many water features do we create so that we can hear the water stream going down? And yes, it's very soothing, but it's also creating a purification. And so water is purified when it is flowing. And we are purified when we are flowing. We have forgotten. And so this is really what I would like to keep bringing it back to, with this wonderful gift of water being such a wonderful example of how to use purification, how to remember who we are and how we have the power. And I hope that for all of you who are watching this, and that you share it as much as possible, to bring people back to never ever taking another sip of water without intention, without love, without gratitude, without sending healing properties to it first. So, in other words, heal the water as it comes out of your tap with love, purify it with love. And therefore, all the water that is coming into your world, particularly if you have families, then your children will benefit, you will benefit. So start looking at water as a part of you, and make it a living part of your life rather than just a commodity or a convenience or something that you have to have, otherwise you can't live. Yes, that is the truth. But how will you live? That depends on what you put into it, in everything. So start with your water. And that I mean your water inside and your water outside.
So great. So beautiful. Yeah, I'm just bringing up some of the comments here. They're wonderful. And I have a question here from Paula. And so I'll put a little link in the chat regarding the 28 days water connection, because that may be a nice recurring cyclical way to connect. Liz lives in Melbourne. She does ceremony every day. And what she does, she makes the water in Melbourne, and then she puts it out and she puts her intention in. She's been working with water for I don't know, a decade now, and it's her life. She has a spiritual relationship to it that I can't. I'm still a what do you call that, in kindergarten with her, so to speak. But she sends 10 liters or 20 liters of water over to Bali to arrive here, where her associate here uses the water to make incense. And then the incense gets infused with the water, mixed with tobacco, and then that gets sent back. And that is what she burns as a ceremonial um, process to aid her direct environment in the frequency challenge that that area has had for a very long time. And you know a lot about what Melbourne has been, going through over the past year. But there's a little link. It's called divinesimplicity.net, and it's just something for people to look at and how they can maybe start a moon calendral practice with water, putting it out, so that it receives the infusion of the solar system around us that all has magnetic frequencies, and adding to that, of course, your own beautiful wishes for your water. And that water to me um, is up leveled in its frequency, so to speak, because it's intentionally um, set out in a container to become infused with frequencies, and it's a beautiful process. One of the things that I'd like to offer people as a reminder, we talk a lot about taking in water, and prior to taking it in, doing something with it, which of course is super relevant. It's a caring for ourselves. It's caring for the fact that we are 85% water ourselves. But one of the things that maybe people are aware of is that other people have done that, and they write on the pipes that come into the house, they write love messages. They do that with the kids. It's such a great thing to do, to bring the, the love frequency into the water pipes before it even comes out of the tap.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to remind people that water doesn't end by you consuming it. And so on your sewage pipes, write as much love, write as much beautiful gratitude and expressions of, flow forth in ever healing, expanding. Put your wishes for what that water that passes through your household, what that water can be doing as it journeys on. Because yes, the beautiful frequency came into us, and then we pass that through. I would say that that frequency imprinted passes through us, but how many liters of water are not going down the sink without any intention, because we only focused on the water affecting us? Now I'm going to have showers, and I'm having showers, and I'm grateful for the water falling onto me. But how about wishing that wet water, a beautiful wellspring of expansion and rejuvenation, as it passes right past me, also into the sink, into the sewage, and into the waterway systems here? There's so much that the on-flow effect that we as humans can also have an imprinting effect on. And so instead of just looking at the water that comes in and putting nice labels and stickers and love hearts on that, do the same for as the water leaves your beautiful space, so that we're we're not spiritual consumers. We're caretakers. We're mediums in the process. that we can enhance also how the water travels on and travels away. Because when I'm doing the dishes, I don't necessarily see myself blessing my dishes because I just want my dishes to get clean. But if I, if I'm sitting with the notion that all that water is just going to run through and go somewhere else, well, that's maybe 5 to 10 liters of water that I could also just have beautifully give a nice and kind blessing as it flows onward. The gratitude for it coming into my house and then leaving.
Yeah, absolutely true. And also, it's not about the water that we're consuming. It's also the water we step into if we go swimming. Connect with that water. Be grateful for that water. Um, Whether you go surfing or whatever you want to do, just don't take anything for granted. Really have a relationship with your environment and with and give blessings and purifications to the water that you go. I know here in Australia we have, have where we always give reverence to the Indigenous people of the land, and so I would like, for me, I give reverence to that, but I give reverence to the waters and the river spirits and the rain spirits and when we do that, it really makes our life so much more meaningful. Well, it does for me.
So beautiful, Yvonne. I feel that we've kind of scratched the surface on the
Only
subject,
barely.
only barely. Such a beautiful conversation. If you enjoyed this, please share it around. These are the kind of subjects that we like to explore because it is about entering into that space and the frequencies of the new earth. And that's all about how we relate to life, how we relate to our relationships with life, and water being such an intricate part of that. And I certainly can up level my relating more consciously, with more reverence, with more presence. And very grateful for the opportunity to go through the process of getting reminded myself. As I shared, I've had a very rich journey with the science of water and the spiritual journeys that I've had in terms of ceremonial gatherings. And yeah, still it is a daily practice. Every day I take water in. And so grateful that we're here. We're going to close this out with a little video. Any last words, Yvonne?
Just thank you. And yeah, I just feel so blessed. Talking to you, and they showed me all those pictures of the blessings of the water in Bali. But we can bless the water within, our own home, and remember to bless the water within my body. It's a
Mm,
constant reminder. Thank you so much.
beautiful.